the chiropractic crew. This is Dr. Scott Haggerty. And hey, guys, listen, I wanted to take a little bit of time today for us to be able to have a conversation about some really important topics because, as I'm sure many of you have seen right now, it sure seems like a whole heck of a lot of people are getting really sick right now. So, if you guys are watching this on here, what I'd like you to do is if you have questions about something that we talk about, go ahead and drop a comment in. So, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So, the main goal of my conversation today here on these platforms, wherever you are, do me a favor. If you're watching this live, go ahead and drop a comment and say hi. Love to hear from you. I want to talk about the really important role of the autonomic nervous system in regulating our immune system because this is something that is really heavily overlooked in most of everything that you look on social media. You never hear anybody that says, "Oh man, get your vagus nerve stimulated so your immune system's strong." Well, I will tell you this, by not knowing about that, it is a major league whiff in what you can do to really boost up your immune system. And I can tell you this because in working with chiropractic as a doctor now for the last near 11 years, I've seen the effects directly, right? We have so many patients who over the course of my career have come in who had major league immune issues, sick all the time. They start getting adjusted, their immune system gets stronger, and they're fighting off things they never could fight before. And if you understand the basics, right, about how the immune system and the nervous system connect, this will make a lot of sense. And I didn't understand this until we really got into chiropractic school because I got better, right? Like when I was a chiropractic patient, I went from having crazy allergies and sick all the time and long history of infections to all of a sudden now over the course of the last 20 years, like it's incredibly rare for me to get sick. And so you don't understand what's happening. You're just like, wow, this is a really cool effect of this getting adjusted thing. But let me take you back to this really important role of the autonomic nervous system when it comes to its ability to strengthen and engage and activate the immune response. So there is this critical balance between these two systems, the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight side of the nervous system, and the parasympathetic, which is rest, digest, growth, development, healing. This section, this division of the nervous system, is what regulates our body's ability to fight off infections. And this is a really important role because there's a well documented shift that occurs if the immune system is not well balanced. And this becomes really important because if we have a nervous system that is too dominant towards the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system, it takes away what is called cell mediated immunity. The ability of the body's recognition of injured cells that have been infected by a virus or bacteria and then come in, kill off those cells, mark them then with antibodies, and switch over into long-term immunity. Well, the Th1 parasympathetic driven side of the immune system, that's its primary job. When it detects an infection via the nerve receptor cells, sense the area being infected, it sends in the immune system. The cell-mediated immune system comes in, marks those cells, kills them off, creates antibodies, so now you have long-term immunity. Well, one of the things that you have to understand is that the vagus nerve runs that. And so if you have a high functioning, well balanced autonomic nervous system, good tone in the vagus nerve, then your body's ability to tag, go after, and kill off infections is going to be strong. If you have a nervous system that it's dominant towards the sympathetics, then what happens is that your nervous system is not able to come in, kill off those cells effectively, but it has a dominance towards what they call antibody mediated immunity. And so this becomes a big issue because now your immune system is super susceptible to getting infected and it has a low ability to fight off the infections. So, how do you fix this? Well, let's start first and foremost with understanding that you have to actually know that it's there. One of the best tools that has been created over the course of the last probably 50 years to be able to understand the balance between these two systems is a thing called a heart rate variability. Now, if you're an elite patient, and if you're an elite patient on here, guys, say hi. I'd love to hear from you. I want you to understand that the HRV technology is something that is the best known tool for assessing the direct balance between the vagus, parasympathetic, and the sympathetic so that we can see which of those two systems is out of balance, too much sympathetic tone, too much parasympathetic tone, or right and finite balance, able to manage things while the way they're supposed to. If that happens the way that we want it to, right, you can fight off anything. You've got a great response. Doesn't mean you're never going to get sick, but your body's ability to fight effectively, get back to health really quickly is going to be at its maximum potential. Okay. When you look at an HRV, right, and the one that we use is a resting HRV. So it allows us to be able to see the balance point between those two when the nervous system is not under stress. And I happen to love that because we know that if your nervous system is under stress, then the variability, the adaptability is likely going to be poor if you have a poor adaptability to stress when you're at rest. So when we look at an HRV and we see that a person's got a sympathetic dominance, in the vast majority of cases, we also see that there is a high connection to them having a lot of illnesses in their history, whether it's allergies, because what ends up happening is if you have a sympathetic dominance, it also triggers IgG and IgE responses to be higher, which are your allergic responses. So if this is something that you deal with, understand that there is a strong connection between poor vagal tone and the activity of your sympathetic nervous system. So that we get so many people who come in and they'll have a long history of allergies and they start getting adjusted and we start to see improvements in their allergies. But right now, when you're talking about getting into cold and flu season, right? We can take all the vitamins in the world. We can do all of the right stuff with our nutrition. But if our nervous system isn't able to do the front end work of recognizing, hey, I'm getting infected, and then effectively send the system into to an attack mode against the infection, then your body won't be able to react the way that it's supposed to. So if we see on an HRV that a person's got a sympathetic dominant nervous system, then we know that their ability to fight off infections is going to be low. Because there was a study that I was actually just pulling up here, and I'll share my screen with you guys so you can see this here in a second. But I happen to love it because these research studies about things like the vagus nerve and its function are really cool because they give you the ability to go and see what the research is telling us, because this is well documented, right? These are things that have been long known in the scientific community that tell us that the vagus nerve is way more important than just, feeling calm and being able to meditate. It also has this really critical role in the immune system. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you so you can take a look at this. I want to show you this really interesting paper that I found. I actually saved it into my documents because I think the way that these things work in terms of research studies is they go through and they measure specific things. And so this one here, when they perform this study, I'll share the title. It says the vagus nerve and the inflammatory reflex linking immunity and metabolism. So this is one that was relating to things like causal issues with things like obesity related inflammation and metabolic complications. But this is one of many studies that has been performed on the role of the vagus nerve. And so it's interesting when you look at like the conclusions on this, because they show this strong connection. It says the inflammatory reflex mediated by the vagus has been successfully exploited therapeutically in preclinical models of diseases with etiologies characterized by excessive inflammatory responses. Insufficient vagus nerve cholinergic output may have a causative role in the dysfunctional immune and metabolic regulation observed in obesity, as selective activation of the efferent cholinergic arm of the inflammatory reflex attenuates both inflammation and metabolic derangements. Okay, so now, lots of science in there. So let's take that and just break it down into a couple of really simple pieces. One, the vagus nerve has this really important role in regulating the inflammatory response. So if it works the way that it's supposed to, it has the ability to dampen down inflammation. The reason why folks that are being measured in this study are important because obesity is a chronic inflammatory state. And so what they're talking about is that there's a disruption in the ability of the vagus nerve to properly manage, attenuate, which means regulate, dampen down the inflammatory response in people who are obese, because they are in a state typically of sympathetic dominance, high levels of inflammation, and there's poor ability of the vagus nerve to be able to regulate the inflammatory response. So other studies have been done talking about this thing called the polymodal vagus, where it talks about some of its different functions being things like social emotional, somatosensory, which means like body and sensory, and then regulating things like our movement because it has these other integrative roles, but also the inflammatory responses. And so a high functioning vagus, a vagus nerve that is well stimulated, is going to be able to mount big, profound responses to infections that we get exposed to. If it's not able to do that, then what's going to happen is you're going to get chronically sick, no matter what type of nutritionals you're taking, because of the fact that the immune system and the nervous system are not able to act effectively to get you to a place where you can fight these infections off whenever you're getting exposed to them. Okay. So now, how do you change this? So let's talk about tactics. Number one, obviously, if you are a chiropractic patient at a lead or another place, Whenever you get first signs of an infection, especially if you are in a state of high stress, get adjusted more often. One of the things that HRVs have shown very clearly in all the case studies and things that we've done, even in clinical research here, is when you get adjusted, there is an instantaneous activation of the vagus nerve. Your heart rate variability improves. The other side is that you want to be very aware of the foods that you're putting in so that they're not creating dominance towards the sympathetics, activating the fight or flight responses. So you want to try and eat low inflammatory foods, right? Because all inflammation, all stress in the body can change that balance point between the vagus nerve and the sympathetics. So low inflammatory foods means that you want your predominant diet to be one that is like fruits and vegetables, lean meats, organic foods, not GMO foods, not pesticide-laden foods. You want to have, lots of nuts and seeds, and you want to have lots of seasonings like garlic and curcumin and stuff like that in your diet, because those are all very anti-inflammatory. If you're a chocolate lover, you'll hear that. You want to hear this because, having a little bit of high purity dark chocolate, like 85% or greater dark chocolate, has a really significant immune enhancing effect. If you are a wine lover, having 1 glass of red wine per day has been shown to dramatically lower the inflammatory response within the body, which is a great thing because the less inflamed you are, the stronger your immune response is. Getting regular exercise is really important, whether you're an adult or a child, because one of the biggest things you have to think about, especially when you're talking about stress, is that lack of movement equals accumulated stress. So if you're feeling stressed right now and you're also not getting a lot of movement and exercise, understand that the fastest way for you to lower your stress levels is doing the things that we talked about, increasing your amount of exercise and movement that you're getting on a daily and weekly basis. This will dramatically improve the way that your nervous system is able to handle stress. If you're dealing with high levels of emotional stress, you want to make sure that you are setting aside time to do things such as meditation. You want to spend time in deep breathing. You want to make sure that you're having, self-care things like, it'd be great to be able to do things like times of just like flow-based meditative yoga. Getting massages are also great too, because mechanoreceptor input from massage helps to lower stress responses within the body. There's also apps that you can use, like we've talked about in our previous videos. You can use things like the Brain Tap app. There's also the Apollo Neuro Bracelets, which are wonderful. There's lots of these little tools that are out there. If you use the Calm app, things to help with guided meditation, those are great tools. There's even things like tapping, and tapping has been shown to be a very effective tool. Acupuncture is a great tool. Anything that you can use to get your nervous system calm will have a profound impact on your immune function. So I would definitely encourage you that any of these different tools that we talked about today, right, start trying to implement those. If you have a weakened immune system right now, and you're under chiropractic care, get adjusted more often. Because what you'll find is that if you do get sick, you're going to get better faster. You'll also find that your immune response becomes bigger. And let me give you a perfect example. We have a little boy that started care in our office last week. Long-standing history of ear infections. A couple years old, already been on antibiotics 6 times, really dealing with major issues. Never been adjusted before. Mom and dad found us through Google, I believe it was. Came in, went through his exam, went through his report, got his first adjustment end of the week last week. And after his first adjustment, this little dude had crazy amounts of drainage, like so much so. And you know this, like if you've ever had a ton of sinus drainage, it can make you nauseous. This little dude got adjusted, had so much release of fluid from his inner ear and sinuses. They went to the park after getting adjusted. Mom said he threw up because he had so much mucus that had gotten into his belly. And this is it sucks that he threw up, but on the other hand, it's also a great thing because his body started to drain out, because his nervous system for the first time started to do what it was supposed to do, which is, number 1, drain the fluid. 2, activate the immune system, because by getting adjusted, it activated his vagus nerve. It also set in motion his body's ability to drain, because that vagus nerve sends branches up off the brainstem into this muscle from the hard palate to the eustachian tube called the tensor veli palatini that also causes drainage of the inner ear and the sinuses. The vagus nerve is really important. It connects into so many different things. And this is obviously something like if you have a child that deals with ear infections and chronic infections, especially this time of year, all these things that we're talking about are really things that you want to make sure that you're trying to implement in your life for yourself and for your family, because it can prevent so many of these different infections your kids are going to be exposed to at school, out in the environment, whatever. whether it's in daycare settings or in classroom settings or whatever it might be, your sports. So I would definitely encourage you to look towards, implementing these things into your daily routine so that you can start seeing these effects with yourself and your children. Now, when we talk about like foods and inflammation, right? There's a couple of different things that I want to talk about here just to make sure that you understand. A couple of big things as the holidays come up that you want to know about when it comes to lowering inflammatory levels. So last weekend, Dr. Lena and I did a workshop called Healthy for the Holidays. And it's so easy to get into the habits of making the foods the same way, not thinking too much about what's in them. And I'm not saying that you need to go and change everything, but I would encourage you to start making some small changes and looking into how to make some of these small changes to lower the inflammatory levels of your holiday meals. I know in my family, my wife has done an amazing job of really working to bring down the glycemic index, which is the sugar content of the foods that we eat over the holidays. And she has successfully gone gluten free on every aspect of the meal. And that includes if we have, things like stuffing, if we have things like any kind of breads, any bakery, all of those things are 100% gluten free. You use only anti-inflammatory fats, right? And if you want to learn more about this, drop these in the comments wherever you're watching this. We can make additional videos about this. I can get Dr. Lena on here. We can talk about these things to help you to know exactly what you need to do, because I think it's important to understand this stuff. But like, let's take for example, right? So with stuffing, most people don't realize that if you use a really good gluten-free, like a gluten-free bread, like for example, Char makes a really good tasting gluten-free bread, SCHAR. It's sold in the gluten-free section at just about every store. That is the brand that we use the majority of the time whenever we make our stuffing. It is an apples to apples replacement. You can use that instead of the regular white bread or the whole grain bread that you would use for your stuffing. Nobody will notice the difference. It tastes just as good. My wife bakes it up, works with it exactly the same way. Nobody knows any different, and it tastes fantastic. When you're looking at things like gravies, one of the best replacements that you can use for things like gravies would be things like namaste flour. Now, namaste is a cup to cup equal trade-off for wheat flours. My wife uses namaste flour for literally any and everything that relates to cooking and baking where you would normally use flour. So like if you're making a gravy, all you do is use equal amounts of wheat flour, of the namaste flour, in exchange for your wheat flour. It tastes fantastic. You'll notice no difference, nor will any of your guests or family members. So just use that as a replacement. You can buy it on the shelves at Costco, and just about every grocery store has namaste flour now. And it's really easy. I mean, it's the baking instructions, if you're making bakery, have to be modified slightly. My wife can go through it in additional videos and help you with that if you would like. But when you're doing baking, right, she substitutes it out on a cup by cup basis. She doesn't use Crisco for shortening, and she uses a thing called Spectrum, which is a palm oil shortening. Now, one of the things you have to understand about why this really matters is that palm oil shortenings are anti-inflammatory versus Crisco, which is a saturated fat shortening. It's all trans fatty acids, long chain saturated fats, very, very bad stuff. So if you use the Spectrum, in place of using Crisco, you've taken something that was an extremely inflammatory fat and replaced it with a very anti-inflammatory fat, because palm oil is way different in its chemical composition than is Crisco. So that'd be a real easy one. There's other things too that she's done, which I think would be very easy to implement, is she replaces regular old cane sugar, which is very high on the glycemic index, with coconut sugar. And it's become probably her favorite sweetener to use when it comes to baking. Coconut sugar is a lower glycemic index sweetener that comes from the coconuts. And it tastes great. You won't notice the difference. And she's made lots of things with it. So for the event that we did over the weekend, the Healthy for the Holidays workshop, she made pumpkin chocolate chip cookies, so people could get an example of what these things taste like when you use the namaste gluten-free flour, as well as the replacement of coconut sugar and using these anti-inflammatory oils. Tasted fantastic. Nobody knew the difference. Everybody was like, wow, these things are fantastic. So that would be an easy one for you to go and put into your meals as a replacement for your regular old white sugars, cane sugars. And the one thing I want you to keep in mind too is that whether or not it's organic sugar, it's still high on the glycemic index. So although being organic is better, it's better if you have a lower glycemic index sweetener that has a lower impact on your blood sugar, because the glycemic index is so high on sucrose. You're talking a glycemic index of in the upper 80s. Whereas when you use coconut sugar, it's a glycemic index of 55. That's a drastic difference in the speed at which your blood sugar is going to spike. The other component to glycemic index is glycemic load, and we can talk about that in another video. But knowing that glycemic index is lower is a big thing, because it means there is going to be a much slower spike to your blood sugar, which means much lower inflammatory levels. The other component to glycemic load, right, is the size of the meal. So glycemic index, one piece, glycemic load, the other. So there's always the glycemic index, speed of absorption, coupled with the size of the portion. And so if you look at those two things together, right, there are two parts to the same equation. You have a high glycemic index food with a high glycemic load, a large portion, you're going to have massive inflammation inside of your body, which will also trigger a big inflammatory response and a big sympathetic response, which will lower down your immune system. So hopefully it makes sense how some of these things connect together, and hopefully some of these tips will give you some tools that you can utilize here for this holiday season. I know Dr. Lena and I had a great time talking to the folks at the Healthy for the Holidays workshop. And if you don't know much about this, this was an event that we did for Rise and Love. It is a wonderful charity founded by Barb Sternberg. We love it because it's just a service organization, and they are so giving. They are, we're partnering with them right now in our office to get Christmas presents for folks in our community, the surrounding metropolitan area that are less fortunate, that if we don't help and step up, they will not have Christmas presents. And so if you are a patient of Elite Family Chiropractic, look, they're going to be coming here at the front desk very soon. But definitely go ahead and grab those tickets, because there's going to be so many kids here in our community that are going to be in need. And we love to support Barb and the folks at Rise and Love, because they just do such a great job of trying to serve the exact needs of those people here who are in need in our community. They do food preparation. They do, hundreds of meals per month. For people in need in our community. They do groceries. They're taking care of immigrants coming in from the Ukraine. Their services they perform are just wide and vast. They've also partnered with Elite Family Chiropractic because, as many of you know, right, there's a cost associated with any type of care that you do anywhere. And one of our passions has been to create a fund where we can help folks who are less fortunate, who do not have the financial resources to receive care in our office. So we have partnered with Rise and Love, where their nonprofit is going to act as a board to provide scholarships or grants for care here at our office. And so one of the things that we wanted to do for a very long time was to create community education. She said, if you do community education for us, we will host for you the scholarship fund, so that they can act as the board to review all applicants and distribute the funds to those in need. And we said, gladly. We do all of our workshops for them for free, and we'll be doing them ongoing here throughout the next many years, hopefully, all on nutrition and health education for those who otherwise would not have access to the kind of health information that we have been so blessed to be taught here through our educational process as chiropractors. So if you are someone who feels like you would like to help out, so don't hesitate to contact the folks at Rise and Love and make a donation. I would encourage you to. It would be really, really helpful for folks in our community who have children that are struggling. If you have questions about that, obviously drop a comment here, and I can also provide links and information if you'd like to know more. If there are things you'd like to talk about in future videos, do me a favor, drop that in the comments wherever you're following this, and we will create all of our videos based upon what you're looking for. So, guys, I hope this was useful for you. I know that there was a lot of different things we put into today's video, but I make this content for you. I make this because I want you to know everything that we know, so that you can have access to just tremendous resources for free to improve your health and your wellness. Got nothing to sell, not asking anybody to become patients. I want you guys to get all this health information for free, so that whether you're a patient or not at our office, I want you and your family to have just amazing health and know exactly how to implement these things in your life. Okay. So guys, I hope this was helpful. Hope you got some value. If it was, do me a favor, let us know. Drop a like on the video. If you are following us on YouTube, do us a favor and go ahead and subscribe to the page for future videos. If you are watching us on Facebook and you're not currently a follower of our page, do me a favor and follow and like our page. Okay. guys, God bless you all. And for those of you who are on here, if you have questions, don't hesitate to send us messages here. Either you can DM us or drop comments beneath, and we'll create future videos in response to what you're asking.